Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court and CPS issues. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and today I have a very special guest. His name is Carnell Smith. He is a husband, father, grandfather, ordained minister, and engineer with a degree in electronic engineering technology with studies in information technology and project management. Mr. Smith won his own paternity fraud case using the legislation that he co-wrote with Georgia legislators after the Supreme Court of the United States denied his constitutional arguments. Mr. Smith has written model law, consulted on legislation in more than 10 states, gotten legislation passed in several states, was featured as a guest expert on Dr. Phil, Fox Business News, CBS Early Show, Univision's Akia Ahora, Fiji TV Japan, featured in Time Magazine, Harvard Crimson Review Journal, Georgia State Law Review, Divorce Magazine, Men's Health Magazine, and Reason Magazine. Mr. Smith is also the author of a very, very important book called Trapped by Law. He's spokesman, speaker, workshop leader, is a frequent contributor to TV, radio, books, newspapers, magazines, and film projects in the United States and abroad. He has marketed and sold legal DNA testing for maternity, paternity, and immigration identifications for a decade, and currently serves on the advisory board for the Women Against Paternity Fraud, a 501c tax-exempt nonprofit organization. And I want to welcome wholeheartedly Mr. Carnell Smith. How are
I,
you this evening?
I'm doing well, Marianne, and you did a fantastic job. The check's in the mail on that intro.
Oh my goodness, that was a mouthful.
And that was an awesome intro, if I do say so myself. You made me want to meet that person.
Oh yeah. Well, you wrote a fantastic book. I can't thank you enough for writing something like that, which will, I hope, everyone reads it, young men and especially parents. And we were talking about parents earlier, but, parents need to be aware of this stuff if they've got sons.
Absolutely.
And
Indeed.
what were your thoughts when you started writing that book?
Well, if I could be very blunt with you, before the editors got a hold of the book, I had written probably 15 revisions of the book. And it was some ladies in my business mentoring group that helped me settle on the title, Trapped by Law. And if it would only be fair for me to tell people what that means and what does paternity fraud mean? Because I've caught some flack over 2 decades about calling it paternity fraud. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I myself, just like so many men and boys, and especially our military men, I received a phone call from a former girlfriend who had broken up several months ago, and she convinced me that I caused her pregnancy by giving me a date that lined up with the time that I knew about.
Hmm.
It took me 11 years to figure out that she didn't tell the truth, and I found out only after my pastor's father talked me into taking a DNA test, and he says this is the kind of thing that's happened to a lot of men in the Air Force that he knew about. And the DNA testing came back and said 0.0% that someone caused her pregnancy. It just wasn't me.
Oh, well, that's terrible, but I'm glad you took that test.
I am too, because right at that time, Marianne, the court had just awarded her 40% of my net income, which was going to make my wife and my newborn baby, we were going to become homeless because as an engineer, I was salaried, working 60 hours a week. I was on call 24/7. There is no option to get another job for me.
Mhm.
And with a wife that just had our daughter, and by the way, I took a DNA test for that one too.
Oh, yeah.
And looking at what the financial impact was going to be to our family and the emotional impact of discovering this precocious, brilliant, beautiful little girl who I thought was mine,
Mhm.
it turns out that the guy who's the actual father and I share some similar physical traits.
Hmm.
and I guess maybe both he and I were her type of guy.
Mhm.
But in the end, I think I was the most financially suitable
Mm.
candidate.
Mhm.
Staff engineer, own a side business, two
Mhm.
cars, a house. Other guy just got into the military. I think I fit the list as most financially suitable.
That's
But my
terrible.
but my pastor's father says you need to take this test. And I thought I was going to prove to him the child was mine. And that's when my world and
Mm.
everybody's world, my former daughter, my family, and everyone, including people in my church, they all said, well, we never believed she was yours,
Ooh.
but we thought you were such a great dad. We
Mm.
did not want to hurt your feelings.
Oh no. You know, so you were paying child support for how many years?
11 years
11 years.
voluntarily without a court order. Mind you,
Oh man.
you hear a lot of these statements there that we want men to step up to the plate. We
Hmm.
want men to be responsible, right?
Hmm.
And plus, my own father had said, you know, if you help bring kids into this world, you help take care of them,
Hmm.
and look, and be involved.
Hmm.
So I'm the dad who knew the teachers at school. I'm the
Hmm.
dad who shows up on, without
Oh.
advance notice, just drop in to the point to where when all was said and done, the worst thing that my ex-girlfriend could say about me under oath, she said the worst thing she could say about me is that I broke up with her.
Oh.
That's all she could say.
And this was your punishment.
And that was my punishment. And that was to then use the courts to punish me in such a way that my family and I would be devastated. And by the way, I was facing felony child abandonment because once that DNA test said that I didn't do it, I refused to pay because I figured out that if I continued to pay, it was going to be a lot harder to get money back
Hmm.
for being falsely uh, identified, fugaboo, tricked, snookered, deceived,
Hmm.
scammed. And I thought about it. I says, you know, in no other area of law besides family court where a judge can say, we know what the truth is, we see the facts. Oh, and they discarded my first test saying, well, we don't believe your test because it was just you and the child. We demand a second test. I said, fine, I'll take another test. This time we took the test with myself, the former daughter, and her mother. So now I end up with two tests, say 0%. This time, the second test proves she's the mother.
Wow. Yeah. This is what
Marianne,
these courts are bad. They're just bad.
well, Marianne, the first word in the title of my book is trapped.
Hmm.
Because after I could get my head and my heart around the fact that nothing's ever going to be the same again,
Oh.
and my ability to see my former daughter is based on the gatekeeper. Her mom
Hmm.
made her role as gatekeeper, meaning, regardless of what court orders say, she made it difficult for me to see my former daughter on my court ordered days. Even when I showed up with the police, she said she still wasn't going. And I showed the officer, look, officer, here's my orders. And the officer says, I see what you're saying, Mr. Smith, but that's a civil matter. You're going to have to take that back to court and be called. Look, and I called the police. He says, if you don't leave her property in 30 seconds, I'm going to have to arrest you for trespassing. So he wrote it up. He apologized profusely. He says, I can't just go in there and take the kid. And I said, listen, I understand, officer. Listen, I appreciate you here, documented. And he told me, he says, you know what? I wish a whole lot more dads handled this the way you did, is that
Hmm.
you called us and not the other way around.
Definitely.
But
Oh.
in the end, though, I finally go back to court, Marianne, and the judge says it's my fault that I didn't find out sooner that my ex-girlfriend lied to me, and ordered me to continue paying. But at this point, the ex-girlfriend has cut me out totally because the truth is now out. She cut my parenting time to 0. I went from unlimited parenting time when we didn't have court orders to when we got court orders. I got cut down to once every other week and once every other weekend. And then when she interfered, I got no time and all payments.
How did you get out of that?
It was only after my pastor's father talked me into getting that DNA test. That was when I said, well, you know what? I am not going to go through this parental alienation syndrome again. I went through that once before with a former fiance. And I said, I'll be darned if I'm going to go bankrupt again. Little did I know how dumb I was in saying that, because that led to me appealing each court decision. And then I go from the state court to the appellate court. And now I have evidence that shows over 30,000 men and boys in my state have been DNA tested, proven not to be the fathers, but they were not all set free. Many are still ordered to pay anyway, and you can't see the kid because you're not related. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Biology matters if I wanted to pursue custody. Biology matters if I wanted to exercise parenting time. But once there's a court order that says, okay, you thought you were the dad, you were responsible as a dad, what we want men to do, and we want teen boys to do. But once you find out you've been deceived and you're no longer willing to cooperate and hand over 40% of your take-home pay, then it's your fault you didn't find out sooner.
Well, you know, the thing is, like, how would you have known? You just went along with this. You were naive. You know,
Listen,
you just...
I dated this woman for 2.5 years. I never knew her to lie about anything. So here's my philosophy is this. Until you treat me badly or do me wrong, I believe there's good in everybody. I won't just hate a person because other people dislike them. Now, after my court experience, I will say I'm a lot more cautious than I was before. Okay. But that taught me something, is that where justice is supposed to be blind in its application, and that a judge is supposed to be a trier of fact, then how could the judge say it's my fault when the mother is the only one that knew between she and I that she was involved with other people? And Marianne, here's what happens when I subpoenaed her, her mother, her brother, and her girlfriend. I got the whole story, stitched it together, and found out she actually got pregnant 6 weeks after I broke up with her. I was never in the possibility of being the father.
Oh, that is sickening. That's a terrible thing to do to someone. I mean, I have sons, and that's why I was very happy and anxious to talk to you, because I want to know more about what happened, because what happened to you, I don't want this happening to my sons.
And me either. And that's part of why my analysis of the thing is that teen boys and men are at risk, whether you know the mother, whether you've ever touched her or not, because there is no evidence required in filing a paternity lawsuit against a male. Now think about that for a second. If there's no proof required, then that means on the word of the person filing the suit, who is the mom, who is also the person who has the most incentives to not be 100% honest. So if by chance you file this on a guy and he doesn't come to court because he says, well, I know I didn't touch her. Hey, we never even had a kiss. If he doesn't show up at court, Marianne, he could be deemed a father by default judgment. And then the court will say, you no longer get to challenge this because you didn't show up to protest it at court. That's horrible.
It's horrible. I always tell people, go to court. You know, some people think, oh, well, my lawyer's going for me.
Yeah.
No, you better go. You better go.
Yes, yes. And unless your attorney has gotten an excuse from the court and been excused from the court, at a minimum, you need to be there
Mm-hmm.
to state what your interests are and make sure that it gets in the record. Hey, I'm a firm believer of hiring one's own court reporter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In case you have to do something on appeal that I I won't say that I'm a little jaded now, but sometimes what
Mm-hmm.
the judge should do by the strict letter of the law,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't happen. And if you don't make sure things get in the record, the appellate courts and the Supreme Courts only going to look at the record. They're going to look at the points of facts of law and conclusions of law, things that you got to be very particular about pointing out on an appeal. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of people cannot be an effective pro se, pro per advocate because of their emotions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But let me just shorten this real fast. I did finally appeal it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. I got 2 meetings with the justices over it. I was required to tell them I had gotten a law passed in my state. And in Georgia, we got legislation passed that says if the paternity test results say 0% and you meet certain conditions, it says the court shall vacate that order.
Mm-hmm.
Now, think about this for a second, Marianne. That does not say may. That doesn't say at judicial discretion. It says shall
Mm-hmm.
vacate. And what's so great about that is vacating an order treats it as if it never exists, which means a person who's going to jail or prison under this type of scenario who was trapped can get their life reset back to 0,
Mm-hmm.
get your name off of birth certificates, names off of any records that tie you to this court order, and know it's not about just a child. Because so many people try to downplay the impact to a man or a teen boy, and they try to downplay the impact to that person's freedom by saying, oh, it's only about the child. But Marianne, only the man or boy whose name's on that court order faces going to jail. And once the dollar amount on the order exceeds $2,501, he can be prosecuted for 3rd-degree felony child abandonment.
Wow, these laws are twisted.
And as you know from your own experience in parental alienation and being falsely accused, and you find out it's not the same as when you're innocent to proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wait a minute, I'm innocent and I got to prove I'm innocent.
Right. Yeah, it's
That's a
you're
much harder fight.
and you're automatically guilty until you
Yes.
prove yourself. It's like this is absolutely crazy.
Yes. And you know what? What amazes me over 20 years, I hear something from people that just make me chuckle. All right.
Mm-hmm.
They say, all you got to do is get a lawyer.
Oh, no, you've got to, well, like after I had some health issues and
Uh-huh.
I did win a Superior Court case.
And congratulations
Yeah.
on
Woohoo.
having to put up your dukes.
Definitely. I showed that judge. Boy, was she mad. But anyway, I told my husband, I said, in my condition, I said, I hate to do this, but we've got to get a lawyer.
Yes.
And
Yes.
he says, yes. And my counselor knew of one who was
Yes.
she was a Supreme Court attorney.
Okay. Okay.
And she
Who
raised hell.
understood what it's
Oh,
like to get stuff in the record.
yes. Oh, yes. Brilliant. She was brilliant. I mean, whatever she said,
Mm-hmm.
the judge kowtowed. And
Yes.
it was great. It was so wonderful to hear the attorney say, Your Honor, you have to abide by what the Superior Court ruled.
Yes. And that tells me you had a litigator. Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be honest with you. Over these years, I've pretty much classed attorneys into 2 groups. There are negotiators and there are litigators.
Mm-hmm.
And my analogy of the litigator is the person who shows up court with a briefcase, a notepad, and a pencil, and they draw the Benjamin Franklin T on the page when they pull it out of their notebook and said, this is my whoop ass and take names list. Which side do you want to be on? Because if you follow the law correctly, we're not going to have any trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But since we brought our own court reporter, I want you to know I'm going to be a stickler for everything that the law says my client is entitled to, and I'm not going to settle for anything less. Now, that's a litigator.
Yes.
A
Now,
negotiator, they
mm-mm.
won't aggressively represent your interests like a litigator will.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, can you tell people how did you get your own court reporter? Some
I
people may not know.
hired, look, I in my state, you know, you have the option of using the county employee. But if I be honest with you, I didn't have much trust for them because I saw some things happen in court where what I saw happen in open court and have the judge go in and have a ex parte discussion with the court reporter, and suddenly stuff that happened wasn't in the record
Hmm.
that we saw, but we weren't allowed to record for ourselves. So, I believed in hiring a private,
Hmm.
duly licensed, trained, and skilled court reporter. So in my state, we just hired our own and made the court aware of that from the beginning and made it clear we were only going to pay for who we hired. Now, if the other side wanted to use the courts, a courts county employee, that was on them and they was going to be on their dime.
Well,
But I just have become a little jaded. Okay.
I don't blame you, but like someone may wonder, okay, how did you find your own court reporter? Like, are they in the yellow page? They're not in the
Believe it
yellow
or
page.
not, they are.
Oh, are they?
They are.
Oh, this is good. Okay, everybody knows now. That's great. This is excellent news.
But what you got to have in the very beginning is you have to have a clear realization. As smart as you are, I don't care if you got 190 IQ, if there's such a thing. You have a blind side when you're dealing in an area and an arena where you don't know the rules of the court, the rules of civil procedure, the rules of evidence, and the law, the statutes.
Hmm.
It's kind of hard to learn how to fight while you're fighting
Hmm.
and be effective at the same time.
Right.
So I recognized that I had a blind spot. So I hired myself a litigator. Okay.
Hmm.
But my litigator told me, says, Carnell, I got to be honest with you. Even with the evidence and 2 DNA tests, we have less than a 50% chance of winning.
Oh no.
He says, because the law is wrong. And he said, unfortunately, sometimes you have to take a case up on appeal to argue points of law on how there is an injustice being perpetuated on the people by the law. And I actually found a chief judge of the state Supreme Court. I found a decision where he had ruled in favor and got the rest of the justices to sway in his opinion. He said in the areas of paternity fraud, he says this is a miscarriage of justice that effectively forces all men and boys to never believe the moms, because if you're going to rule against them for discovering that they've been deceived later,
Hmm.
then their only out is to take a defensive position in round one and
Hmm.
say that, Your Honor, I'm not saying that I'd caused the pregnancy, and I'm not saying I didn't. I'm saying that until I have test results in my hand,
Hmm.
the decision is out on that one, Your Honor. It's pending.
Yes,
But
definitely.
but ultimately, after I had that second meeting with the Supreme Court justices, they required me to send a copy of the Georgia law that we'd gotten passed. It passed the House of Representatives 163-0.
Wow.
It passed my Senate 45-5, and my governor signed it with me watching and with the judge from my case watching the signature. And the judge on my case apologized to me face to face and said I was wrong and that
Wow.
I'm glad that the law has changed. Put his hand out to shake my hand, and I shook his hand because I understood that as a senior judge, he did not have to be there at the signing of the legislation.
Hmm.
That said something to me that it resonated with him, because once this happened with my case, Marianne, I went all over the globe looking for other people who were affected.
Hmm.
And by publicizing the issue, I managed to find data that shows over 1 million men and boys who have been tested by the legal parentage of the American Association of Blood Banks. It says over a 10-year period, over 1.1 million men and boys have been determined to not be the fathers. And then when I contacted various state agencies using the Freedom of Information Act, the FOIA, I asked, well, since you use taxpayer funds to pay for these tests in most cases, how many of them turn out to not be the dads, and how many of them did you have the orders vacated? The state child support enforcement agencies unanimously again and again said, we don't track that information.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Marianne, that made me start studying Title 4D, Section 458, bonuses, incentives to the states. And I just started looking at, well, why is the state? Because listen, in my case, there were like 6 representatives from the child support agency in the courtroom on the day that I won. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have a welfare case. Why are these people here? And the reason they're there, Marianne, is they were concerned that my case could become a case that other people could cite and use for overturning their own cases. So the child support agency did not publicize to people who were actively paying that the law had changed. So unless you happen to see me on television, radio, or catch me out on YouTube and other social media, you could be in a state where I've have worked to get the law changed and not even know there's a remedy.
Oh my gosh. Oh, well, that's domestic relations for you, right? I
Yes,
mean, they want to
yes.
collect and collect. And, people say, well, they can't get blood out of a turnip. And I'm sick and tired of
Oh, I've
hearing
heard
that.
that.
They will. They
Listen,
have
that,
ways.
I'm finna say, they said, tell you what, we'll let you sit in this jail cell for 6 months minus 1 day until you either come up with the money
Mm-hmm.
or you come back before the judge with a plan on how you're going to pay the money.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, but Your Honor, I've been framed. That's a pregnancy I didn't commit, and we can prove I didn't commit that pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I, of sound mind, as a freeborn American who loves my liberty and my pursuit of happiness, I love all of these things. Why would I sign myself up for an escalating responsibility? Because it was 40% when I started fighting. Well, if as my salary would go up, guess what else would go up?
Mm-hmm.
That economic responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do I, in clear conscience, tell my wife we can't buy clothes for my daughter, who I've DNA tested that is mine with my wife, to send money across town to a household where we've been deceived for 11 years? At this point, this has cost me $250,000, including all of the appellate court fights, loss of use of the money, the interest on my money. At this point, why would I, of sound mind and judgment, agree to stay trapped? Now you understand why I call it trapped by law.
It is.
People think of the law as a tool that can be used so that the trier of fact, who is supposed to be the judge, and by the way, in this area of family law, you do not get a trial by jury. It is only
Right.
a bench trial, which means you get to face the judge and whatever prejudices and biases and personal opinions of this judge. In family court, the judge can throw out the evidence and say, on the best interest of the child, you should continue to pay. But Your Honor, well, how come I can't see the child? Because, Your Honor, when I came here asking for your help to help me continue a relationship with the child when I thought I was her father, best interest of the child didn't matter. So, Your Honor, if we're going to go with best interest, I'm going to go with the biological children who are mine.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had adopted a child, then that would have mean I took on the responsibility knowingly and willingly up front for someone who was unrelated to me. I said, but here in this case, we don't have that. We have fraud, deception, sleight of hand. We have dirty hands in terms of the the courts, you know how they want you to have clean hands when you come to the court. Everybody's supposed to deal in truth and fact and with integrity. But when we asked the mother under oath, did you inform Mr. Smith that when you said he was the only possible father, did you disclose to him that you had been involved with some other gentleman? She said that was none of Mr. Smith's business. Indignantly, under oath, she was ticked at them for asking her the question.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. See, I mean, the way I was raised, we were taught not to lie.
Same here.
Like,
Same here, Marianne. In fact, I had some help with one of my appellate briefs, and the attorney who was helping me wanted me to lie in a way that would have been favorable for me, and I probably would have won. And I told him I can't do it. I says out of conscience sake, and the fact that God would know. And my experience is it's not if you get caught, it's when you get caught. And I said I would blow a lifetime of integrity and credibility for trying to win. Taking a shortcut is not worth it. In the end, Marianne, I did win when I went back to court, but the court threw in a stipulation that I was unprepared for. They said they would sign the order to vacate all of the previous orders against me, erase all arrears, erase all future payments, on the condition that I could not sue the ex-girlfriend for my damages. And I felt like you're looking right now.
wait a minute. I mean, I think people have to own up to what they've done to you.
Yes. Yes. And I'm out of $250,000 of my own money. We're not talking about, and this is not a welfare case. So in terms of income, my household income and her household income were very similarly situated over 6 figures. I didn't say welfare. I said over 6 figures per household. She was well able to pay back. Okay?
Right.
And I was willing to work with them on a payment plan. Okay? But I know what would have happened if I had owed 11 years of child support and had not paid. There would be no discussion about getting payments. Even if they had to turn me upside down and take my wallet from me, those payments would be made, including seizure of checking, savings, money market accounts. That money would be paid. But ultimately, Marianne, this led me to writing the book because, as I understood now from my own experience, that one, I was not the only one. And one of my fellow advocate groups, the Veterans Against Paternity Fraud, had over 600 military men. Did you hear me? That's officers, non-officers alike, that some of those guys received a Dear John letter while they were deployed in combat. Dear John, since you haven't been here, I'm taking the kids and we're going on. And by the way, I've already divorced you. And since you're getting extra pay while you're in combat duty, I need child support and I need alimony. And guess what? The court typically rules in their favor. And then he finds out, had one master sergeant in the Air Force find out that all three out of 3 kids were not his.
Oh, this is terrible. You know, there you are under the stress of combat.
Yes.
You're serving your country, and you've
Yes.
got this person pulling this on you.
Yes.
That
So,
is evil. That's evil.
well, look, let's crack the subject on the book, because I've just
Okay.
told you about, ultimately in my own personal story, after a total of 5 years fighting in court all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, I spent a year getting the law changed, lobbying, and managed to get over 98% of my state legislature to support the effort, and the governor. And mind you, these are people from all political parties voted in favor. I'm a Christian conservative, which closely aligns with Republican. But I speak to everybody when it comes to legislation because it's not a political issue. It's a human rights issue.
Definitely.
You know, a person shouldn't be enslaved against their will to be financially responsible and destitute under pay or go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
So, Marianne, it's important for people to know that in my book, Trapped by Law, that there are 4 primary ways that men and boys become victims of paternity fraud. And would you like to hear them?
Sure. Oh, yes. I'm sure other people need to hear them.
And I say this, that people have to be very clear in their mind that you must understand no evidence is required to file a lawsuit against any male. That means your son, husband, boyfriend, husband. Right now, Marianne, someone could file a paternity lawsuit against your husband who he never touched. But on the presume that she said he did it,
Mm-hmm.
he is guilty unless he shows up to fight it. So the very first thing that happens for most men and boys, if they're in a relationship and they believe any semblance of what's been told to them, it is signing a paternity confession. And these programs have a lot of cute names, such as the Paternity Opportunity Program.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. It gets sicker every time.
Yeah, I'm saying that in my radio voice. The Paternity Opportunity Program. And here's the opportunity. Here's the opportunity to get you signed up for 18 to 21 years. And we want you to sign because once you sign, there is a disclaimer on the form that says you waive the right to a DNA test later and you can't challenge this later because you had the opportunity to do so before you signed this form. Now, how many men and teen boys have the wherewithal of legal thought at that moment in time that I am potentially signing my life away?
Oh, my God.
Without the benefit of counsel, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
And you sign this document now, and if you don't figure it out within 60 days, by the 61st day, you are trapped by law. And in some states, even if you get a DNA test later, they'll say, well, Your Honor, here's what the prosecutor will say. Your Honor, he waived his right to challenge this. And Your Honor, here's the form. Here's the original form, Your Honor. And here's what they won't tell him. They won't tell the judge. Here's how we got him to sign, Marianne. They will put forth as much effort as possible to get that male, teen or boy or man to come to the hospital. And everything is done to try to get him to hold the baby. Because at that moment in time, Marianne, he is emotionally disarmed. And he is not thinking possibility that this could be a trap, that this could be a trick, and that it is a one-way door on this thing. So while we get him to hold a baby, I've read it, Marianne, it's spelled out like this. Tell him how much the baby looks like. Ooh, look, that baby's got your eyes. Ooh, got your dimples. Now look, the other three guys who could be the dad also have dimples, also have your same facial features because all 4 of you are her type of guy. Which I'm saying right now is the lookalike test is highly unreliable because you ever heard of people said, well, I was picked out of a lineup and it wasn't me. You could be falsely ID'd on the lookalike test. But if you sign that paternity opportunity document or the paternity acknowledgement form, the PAF, you are waiving your rights to challenge later. And even if the mother herself on the 61st day, she says, hey, chump,
Yeah.
I got you. And you're going to pay me. And by the way, me and Lil Junior, we're moving to Alaska with my baby's father. And if you don't have that money on time, I will go file a motion with the family court. And don't worry, I'll just sign the form for Office of Child Support Enforcement. I will authorize them to do the collections for me. And I can go live anywhere I want to, and they will collect the money on my behalf.
Oh,
because it's in the best interest of the child. How do you like option 1 so far?
Oh, my God.
Not real good when you hear it from my perspective. And by the way, that's the one that I got caught with.
Oh my goodness.
Because here I am after over 20 years as a legal advocate now.
Hmm.
With what I know now, there's no way you'd ever get me with that.
Hmm.
But back then, when I was about 28, had no knowledge of these things, had
Hmm.
never dealt with, people who like lie like that, never thought something like that. I kind of expected everybody to be truthful and honest.
Hmm.
So that's number one. Number two is incorrect default judgment. Incorrect default judgment works this way. The guy, he may have been in a relationship with her at one time in the past, and she lists him down as the father, and she might really believe, Marianne, she might really believe in her heart, mind, and her spirit that that's the baby's father. But once she signs the documents to file that lawsuit, then the presumption is he did it because she said so. Now, he must show up and challenge that court order. And if he doesn't show up, Marianne, a decision will be made. Let me see if I can find a pen. I'm going to show you all it takes to make someone the legal father.
Uh,
If I put one of these in the hand of a family court judge
hmm.
or a non-elected hearing officer who may or may not be an attorney but has been appointed to help with managing the docket for family law cases. And because for whatever reason, including you are deployed and in combat duty, you can't just suddenly tell your commanding officer that, well, look, Sarge, I need to be at court on Tuesday, and you need to make arrangements to get me a transport from Afghanistan so I can
Oh.
be at the family court in Anchorage, Alaska. And because this person doesn't show up, Marianne, they
Mm-mm.
will become the legal father at the stroke of a pen. And because he doesn't challenge it, he is precluded in some states from challenging it later because he wasn't there. How are you liking number two?
The stress that someone is under when they cannot even go or make it to,
Yep.
I mean, it's like you want to die.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, I will admit there are some times where the guy really is the dad and he is just saying, well, if I don't show up, they can't do anything to me. They can't touch him.
Mhm.
Listen, there is a correct application for a default judgment. All
Mhm.
right? And I
Mhm.
will concede that point. But you should separate those from the people who are challenging, saying, Your Honor, I don't know this woman. I never touched this woman. Your Honor, I will pay for the test and I'll pay for the whole thing. I'm innocent and I can prove it.
Mhm.
That's the person we should be allowing to get a test. And by the way, we should have required that the mother say two things. One, under oath. Is this person the only person she was intimately involved with during the 60-day window of conception for that child? So
Mhm.
conception date for the child plus 30 minus 30 days.
Mhm.
Whoever she was with involved with her in that window can be the father of that child. They don't do that. And I want her to answer that question under oath.
Mhm.
You hear
Mhm.
me? Because if she does that under oath and that DNA test result come back and it's not the guy she swore under oath, guess what that means? That is a willful and knowing perjury.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if this person has incurred any financial damages such as legal representation, having to incur costs to travel there to represent himself in court where he would not have had to do so otherwise, that should be an actionable damage and he should be able to recover for it. That's what my advocate self says.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Number three. You ready for this one?
Okay.
The marital presumption of paternity. And here's how it goes. According to Old English common law, any children born during the time that a man and woman are still married to each other are automatically assumed or presumed to be the husband's children. even when the wife and her boyfriend know that's not her husband's kid. Oh, if we could just, if I could get a picture of that look on your face.
Well, it's all tricks. It's all tricks.
Yes, yes. And by the way, since the divorce rate is somewhere hovering in the 50 to 60 percentile, and we know who's filing most of the divorces, I got news, it's not men. Mm-hmm. So couple a case of the wife commits adultery, mm-hmm. gets pregnant with the boyfriend's kids, gets to stick it to her husband. She gets to file no-fault divorce. She gets the house, she gets the alimony, sticks him with the bills, and he has to pay child support, and none of the kids are his. Now, tell me why some men might be a little angry.
Exactly. Well, exactly. I mean,
Yes.
you know, like I told you before, I was raised not to lie.
Yes.
I don't know how some of these women can pull this stuff and sleep at night.
But no-fault divorce was supposed to help cut down on the amount of time that you had to wait to finalize your divorce. But instead, it has actually been turned almost into a hammer, because when it's coupled with adultery and the wife is the party committing the adultery and brings home presents from her adultery, it's her husband who gets stuck. And if you look out on my YouTube channel, you'll see I refer to the teen moms and wives and all who commit paternity fraud. I refer to them as Cupcake. And mm-hmm. Cupcake gets to say to the judge, Your Honor, doesn't matter that my husband's not the father. The law says any children born while he and I are married, and Your Honor, I don't have a final divorce decree, and he doesn't either. So according to the law, your job is to get me my money. Uh-oh. Well, according to the law, she's right. So ordered. Slam the gavel, Marianne.
Oh my God. This is a nightmare.
Yes, yes. That's number 3. The last one, number 4, Marianne, is mistaken identity. Marianne, I came across a case where a 15-year-old boy was ordered to pay child support for a 19-year-old kid. Oh, I got to start taking screenshots.
You have to. Oh my, for a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah, and guess
How's
what?
that work? How does that work?
Turns out the kid's name and the biological father's name are exactly the same. And the Child Support Enforcement Agency was not smart enough to determine that it was not medically, scientifically, or logically possible for the 15-year-old to be the father of the 19-year-old.
Oh my God.
So in my world of advocacy, I believe that sometimes you have to make sure things get a lot of light on them so that they can be seen far and wide. So we would tell a situation like this to the mother of that boy is stop talking to the child support agency, call up the troubleshooter line at your local television news and tell them about a situation that parents of teen boys are in danger for, because guess what? Since that boy was unemancipated and a minor, guess whose money would be used to help pay that child support? His mom's. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. She had a major incentive to help her son not get tagged as a deadbeat dad going to jail for a pregnancy he could not have possibly caused. So as bad as it is for a younger person to get misidentified, it also happens to us older men as well. See, I'm Carnell Smith Sr. Mm-hmm. There was a time my son, Carnell Smith Jr., was in boot camp at 29 Palms in California. And what if someone had come after him while he was deployed in Afghanistan? He did 3 tours in Iraqi war. So what if they mix up the names because there's not a lot of syllables between junior and senior? Uh-huh. Right? One letter, right?
Oh my God.
There's a J and there's an S. But then if they look at the finances between the junior and the senior and they go, oh yeah, senior did it, and come after me. That's all it would take. And then unless I fight back, and here's what I know, Marianne, you got to fight back publicly. You got to make sure that child support office gets credit for it and name names on local and national television. Because if they did it to one, they've done it to others who don't have the heart and the wherewithal to fight back. Like you and I as advocates, you do know we're cut from a different kind of cloth, Marianne. Because if they told you and I to just take it and be silent about it, something in you just kind of gets you to going, like right after you get a fresh cup of coffee and that caffeine kicks in, words come to my mind like, heck to the no.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
so, So here they are. 1, it is signing a paternity confession. 2, incorrect default judgment. 3, marital presumption of paternity. 4, mistaken identity. And based on that, most of the people I've ever come across, including the men we did a survey with, and I got nearly 3,000 of them to participate, mostly all of them fell into one of those categories, Marianne. And unfortunately, if it's one of them trying to come against all of the unlimited legal firepower of the prosecutor's office, which is backed up all the way up to the state attorney general's office, those officers will fight to maintain the case against them rather than overturn the case and go after the person who really caused the pregnancy. Think about it. It's easier to get blood out of the turnip that you have than to go after the unknown turnip. I'm just using a play on words with the bird in hand versus the bird in the bush. You get me? And Marianne, because of that, those are enumerated in my book, pointing out how people tell me what they believe can't happen. They tell me that, oh man, all you got to do is just get you a lawyer. But in all of those 4 cases that I just identified, once there is a judgment with your name on it, you're on the guilty side trying to prove you're innocent. And you have to know a lot. You have to know law. You have to know legal strategy, how to maneuver through a maze. And by the way, you're being actively fought through all of it. Like I said, even the Office of Attorney General. So the other side against you has all of the legal firepower. And if you're trying to pay for your own fight, I've been bankrupted twice.
Oh, man.
So this is why I wrote the book, Marianne. It's a horrible situation for men, boys, and it's mostly women who contact me trying to help somebody that's in one of those 4 categories because she understands he's on his way to jail or prison, and without her help, he might be there for a very long time.
That is something, that is just, I keep just saying it's so sickening. It's sickening and it's evil. And I mean, I think when you lie, that's like committing murder. That's right up there with murder as far as I'm concerned.
I'm in agreement with you. And mind you, I hope you hear me good here. I am not a woman hater. I don't hate women. I don't have a misogynist bone in me. Look, I have 2 granddaughters. I have a daughter. I have a wife. I had 7 sisters, 1 deceased. And I have a mom. I don't hate women. I hate lies being used to trap people for something they didn't do.
Right.
There is a huge difference between misogyny and what I'm saying is a man or boy has been framed for a pregnancy he didn't commit, and we can prove he didn't commit it, but yet we say that, well, since he didn't figure it out sooner, he still has to go through going to jail and prison on a rotating basis. Marianne, one of my clients committed suicide over this issue, and he was one of those who was trapped by the marital presumption. And he married his high school sweetheart who told him that she was pregnant, and he was excited.
Oh.
he married her when the bad guy dumped her. And when his daughter was 16, that's when she told him and said, I'm leaving and I'm taking the house and all of this. And the only thing kept him from losing the house is when his parent gifted him the house, they didn't sign the deed over to him. They kept the deed in their name.
Smart.
Yes, yes.
Oh.
But he was so depressed, Marianne, that he just lost his whole family. He was going to get reamed in the family court with alimony, child support, that he isolated himself. I pleaded with him, don't isolate yourself. Go talk to your family. Tell them what you're dealing with. Under no circumstances, stay alone. And right after he helped me and another advocate get the law changed in Oregon, he committed suicide. So this is part of why I still do this over 20 years later. They can't say I have any skin in this game. But I remember how hard it was, Marianne, when I was facing jail and prison and people just telling me, why don't you just pay? I was like, you don't understand.
No.
I can't pay 40% of my take-home pay. And they won't accept less. It's pay or go to jail.
Right. And people don't get that concept. I had a very close friend, and I was telling her, hey, I just got out of jail. And she goes, what, you got out of jail? What happened? And I just said, well, this is what's going on. And she said, well, and she was, I don't know, she got irritated with me, but she said, well, just pay the child support. She hung up on me.
No clue.
No clue. I'm like,
clueless. Clueless.
Clueless.
And then people try to treat you like if you don't get your kids, like as a mom, like you did something wrong. And like, hold on, wait a minute. I'm not trying to play any, blame shifting or any of that stuff. I'm dealing with facts here. So the way over the years, Marianne, how I've gotten a lot more people to understand this issue is put them in the story. And I say, right now, as the host of Slam the Gavel, someone could file a child support order against your husband and say for a 10-year-old, suddenly come after him for 10 years of arrearage, and you will know right after they seize the entire contents of your checking account. And only then would your husband have a clue what happened.
Yeah, this is scary. This is the most scary thing I've heard.
And mind you, and if you're the wife who all of the money just got taken out of your checking account and the mortgage is about to be due, and you're not getting paid for another 2 weeks, and you need to buy groceries, can you understand why the women were quick and ready to fight back? I've actually had to talk a few moms out of going over to the other woman's house, punching her lights out.
Oh, understandably.
Like I said, if you do that, it will reflect on him. I said, but now I can show you how to fight back in a way to where you can say, as an honest woman, you don't understand how the court supports lies and fraud and deception. And if I, as an honest woman, can be truthful, there's no reason that these shameless hussies can't be truthful, because they do know how many people are on the list of paternity candidates. And they know, listen, and they know whether or not they were using contraception or not. But that doesn't automatically say there can be 100% accurate. I've also, in my book, I talk about two other things that contribute to a paternity fraud accidentally. Parallel dating. Think about that. That means simultaneously in multiple relationships at the same time, and one person thinks they're in a monogamous relationship. The other person lets them keep believing they're in a monogamous relationship, but he thinks they're married. She says she is single whenever she's not with him.
Then, if you don't mind my saying, then she's a slut.
And you, as the honest woman, can say that. It's not PC for me to say it.
Right.
So what I'll say is, she is a person with a hyperactive sex drive. That's more PC.
Right, right. But can you go after, like, if you prove all this, can you sue domestic relations?
Well, here's the thing. If you get expert help early involved, you can sue for damages, you can sue for fraud, and you can sue for punitive damages. But
Mm-hmm.
you're going to need someone with legal skill, and you're going to need legal help, I swear you are,
Mm-hmm.
who is skilled in the art of treble and punitive damages, where those areas of fraud come into place in tort law.
Mm-hmm.
Tort law and family law, not the same thing.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Because people hate me for calling this fraud. And I negated to say this earlier. Paternity fraud is a lawsuit brought by a party who is actively suppressing material facts about who are all of the paternity candidates. Think about that. The man or boy who has been accused of being the father, there's only one way he knows there are other guys who could be the father.
Mm-hmm.
If he was an eyewitness,
Mm-hmm.
if he was an eyewitness to an event between her and other males, he knows he's not the only one. Now, everyone else is taking it on faith. And since I know 5 pastors who are paternity fraud victims, nobody's 100% safe.
This is
Did
a
you hear what I
scary.
just said?
Oh yeah, this is a scary world we're living in, people.
Yes, yes. And though, by the way, and one of those pastors, I got him to come out and testify before the legislature while his ex-wife was actively trying to get him jailed
Oh,
for because the kids talked him into taking the paternity test. He had just recently learned that he had a daughter. So the kids, in meeting the new daughter, said, well, gee, you know, she looks like you, Dad, but we don't look like you. So we want to take one of those paternity test things too.
mm-hmm.
So he, on the request of the kids,
Mm-hmm.
took the DNA test, and the twin boys turned out they were not his kids from the first lady of the church,
Oh my God.
pastor's wife.
Oh no.
So he is one of the 5 pastors who are victims of marital paternity fraud. And instead of her being remorseful,
Oh,
apologetic, repentant, she doubled down and demanded that he still pay alimony, child support. And then she told the kids did not have to listen to him because he wasn't their dad. So they literally destroyed his house when they came over, saying that you can't tell us what to do. And he said that was the last time. And after that, when I asked him to speak out publicly on this evil, he and his new wife willingly spoke out. And my legislators said, when I asked them, I said, listen, I don't want to do anything in the dark. I don't want to have any secret meetings and secret discussions about law. I want this to be all out in the open. And I managed to get television cameras at the hearings. I even had television cameras in the courtroom on the day I won my case. I believe these things should be exposed. So for
mm-hmm.
public interest's sake, people
Mm-hmm.
can be made aware that this evil scheme trap exists.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people know about it, the harder it is for courts to rule and keep people trapped by law.
Mm-hmm.
That's my strategy, Marianne. I want to see 1 million men and boys who've been tricked be
Mm-hmm.
freed.
Oh, I do too. I do too. This is a very eye-opener, scary information that I'm going to have my son listen to.
I hope so. I hope so. And
Definitely.
I'd encourage someone that, that they can find my book, Trapped by Law. It's available on Amazon as an ebook or in paperback. And even though you see the Supreme Court there with its logo saying equal justice under law,
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
victims of parental alienation and victims of paternity fraud, and I'm both, can tell you it's not equal application under the law. So the best way to deal with this is that you have to become knowledgeable. Yes, there are pitfalls, and traps for those who are ignorant, and not because they're unintelligent, but they don't expect this kind of stuff to be ruled against them.
Oh, yeah, this is just terrible. I knew, like, when I was going through stuff, it's like, wow, lies. People are actually telling lies. I
Yes.
guess I was so naive that I just didn't think people would lie like this.
Same here, same here. But after meeting people who are victims of false claims of domestic violence, men and women, I never believed that. I used to think that because what was presented on the news seems to only be presented in one gender, and anything that doesn't fit that narrative doesn't get as much publicity. So paternity fraud, I found paternity fraud cases back all the way back to the 30s with Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin was a victim of paternity fraud. And in the modern day, A-list actor Idris Elba, who played on the movie Thor, paternity fraud victim. Kanye West, Michael Jackson, a ton. And I've even had clients who were NFL football players. One guy, he only took the paternity test because the folks in the league told him that it was wise to be 100% sure. And that day in court, I was on site providing on-site services. He says, I believe I'm the dad. He says, and then he tells me his story. He says, yeah, right now, I'm on injured reserve. This guy's like an offensive lineman. Dude's got like a 20-inch neck. He's like 300 pounds, probably got 5% body fat. Marianne, if something bad happens, I want to be on his side.
Right. Yes.
But Marianne, 5 days later, when we got those results back, that big man cried.
Oh my God.
Because the 5-year-old little boy that he'd been led to believe as his kid was not his kid at 0% paternity. And the ex-girlfriend, had filed a criminal charge against him. He told me what happened. He says, the reason I'm here in court is she filed a criminal charge against me for child abandonment. And he said, I just asked her to be a little patient with me. He says, my salary's not the same while I'm on injured reserve, and I'm recuperating, trying to get back in shape so I can play the next season.
And they don't care.
Exactly. He says he paid off her student loans for her undergrad. He paid totally for her graduate, for her master's degree, bought her a condo and bought her a car, and then he found out the kid wasn't even his. And he did all of that because he thought that was his child, and he wanted his child to be comfortable.
That is so sad, but I think this is
rare. It's not rare.
I think God devised hell for people like this. They're going in there.
And by the way, she did not express any remorse in that courtroom. She didn't apologize, not one time. And that big lineman cried. But yet people don't give us men, we don't get any credit for being emotionally damaged and wounded. Because for some guys, this might be the only opportunity, unless he's willing to get in another relationship. If he is the last of the males in his family lineage will die with him. But I asked the ladies, I says, listen, I says, if you think the relationship was so strong, why not just be truthful with the guy? And if he loves you and he's willing to stick it out with you, I says, you guys could build on that rather than you play sleight of hand. I says, for him to find out later pretty much guarantees that there's going to be no future with him. Because I can tell you, we don't like being lied to like this. This is the ultimate betrayal for you to find out, wife, girlfriend, fiance. There's this magazine in Cosmopolitan magazine they did a survey and they asked the women, if you were in a relationship with your significant husband, boyfriend, fiance, and you went out and had girls' night out and you got pregnant, would you tell him? Over 90% of them said they wouldn't tell him. That was scary. Did you hear what I said?
Yeah, that is scary.
And I said, wait a minute, what happened to equal rights? What happened to girl, girl, you got your liberty and your freedom. Go, girl, go. I said, wait a minute. Equal rights means you should be responsible for your own actions, for your own conduct. Why wouldn't you tell him and let the truth be the measuring stick by which you build your relationship on? Because if you build that thing on sand and a house of cards, it's not if it's going to fall. It's when.
Right.
And I tell him, I says, I promise you, when he finds out, he's going to be pissed. And there'll be nothing you could say to keep him in a relationship with you at that point, because you're not trustworthy.
Right. And I know a lot of people are going to probably hate me and despise me for saying these things, but I think they should totally get rid of alimony.
I could see, I would definitely ban lifetime alimony.
Right.
Now, if there's a difference between the incomes in such a way, I would require some help long enough for this person to get trained. Like, for example, the husband's got a JD and wife's got an associate. We support her right up to the point she get her undergrad degree. All right. As long as she's going to school. But if she drops out of school, she's out. All right. Assuming that he's not the reason of the divorce. Now, if she's committed adultery and she's out playing bad girl, I think he should be able to walk away with no responsibility, just like the other way around. Like, I wouldn't ask a woman to stay in a relationship when she find out her husband's done had 4 babies while they're married. I would completely understand her saying, it's a lot of stuff I can put up with, but in that situation there, he didn't even care about her life, where he could have brought back AIDS, STDs. I said, and the same thing for the women who do it. You with me? I completely understand someone who says, no, this is where I opt out.
Oh, yeah, this is, I'm so glad you were on this show. I can't tell you.
Well, thank you for the invite. On a positive note, my book is making it harder to hide this level of deceit and get away with it for a decade. I came across a lady who was one of the major supporters for the American Child Support Enforcement Society. It's called ACES. She came up with a brilliant idea, and I looked at it and I said, you know what? She's onto something. She said, Marianne, and you hearing me say this loudly on Slam the Gavel, she said it was totally unfair for a woman to be forced to put her husband's name on the child's birth certificate while she was living with her boyfriend. Let that soak in for a second.
Yeah.
She is separated from her husband, living with her boyfriend, but according to the law that says while you are married at the hospital, they won't allow that woman to put the boyfriend's name, while everybody knows the boyfriend is the father, because she's living with the boyfriend. Now, sometimes the boyfriend's not the dad either while he's living with her.
Oh,
okay.
Oh, man.
But this lady who was representing the American Child Support Enforcement Society said it was unfair to force a woman to put her husband's name on the birth certificate of her boyfriend's kid. She wanted the option to be able to put the boyfriend's name on the kid's birth certificate. So I took what she said and I put out a press release. National Advocate says DNA testing should be done at birth to ensure 100% accuracy on the children's birth certificate, and put an end to baby swapping happening at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I got hate mail. I was, I was literally thrown under the bus. Oh, you must hate women. Oh, you must have hated your mother.
Oh, God.
You don't, all kind of stuff, right? And I'm saying, wait a minute. I'm saying the same thing
Yeah.
that the woman who was with the child support enforcement said.
Mm-hmm.
She was in support of doing DNA testing so that the boyfriend's name could get on the birth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, well, look, let's do DNA testing so that the facts are known in the beginning. And you know what you
Yeah.
read. You remember you read that I've done DNA testing for over a decade, right?
Right.
I had a husband contact me saying my wife's about to deliver any day now, and I want to get this DNA test set up. And I want to know, will you use your mobile services and come to the hospital? I said, sir, we accept Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. If your card's good, our services are good. And
Yeah.
yes, our mobile services will come to the hospital.
Excellent.
The day the baby's born, we're there. We do the buccal swab. We don't have to draw blood anymore, because we can do the DNA analysis using the cheek cells out of the mouth. And as long as you're alive, you are producing millions of those things every day. Okay? Swab the man, swab the mother, swab the baby. Results come back in about 4 days, and the husband is not the father. Then we get a phone call, and it's the wife, because we haven't delivered the results yet. She offers us $10,000 to change that report to say that it's her husband's baby. Did you hear what I just said?
Oh, that's bribery now. Come on.
I didn't know if I was being punked. I didn't know if it was some TV show trying to like pull a hustle and then try to televise it. I told her, I said, look, lady, you're out your ever-loving mind. I said, listen, for you, and by the way, she said, because she was Muslim, that when that result comes out, she says she would be stripped naked and whipped outdoors in the street, because she dishonored her husband and her own family by getting pregnant with someone else's baby while she was married to her husband. And I said, lady, I'm sorry. I says, well, you're in America now, so I'm going to ask that maybe you might want to take your story to the police department. But what I'm not going to do is, there's no way on hell I'm going to change your test results and use Adobe or something to modify your secure PDF form. I'm like, no, lady, here's what we do is we deliver an accurate copy direct from the lab to all adults who took the test. Your husband is going to get his copy straight from us, and you're going to get your copy straight from us, and both copies are going to say 0% paternity, which you already know. By the way, she already knew. Now, I don't know what else happened with that story, but I know there's no way we were going to get involved, because when I was hearing this situation could become potentially explosive and violent,
Right.
and
Right.
and I'm like, I said, lady, based on what you told me, you got enough for you to talk to the police. I highly encourage you to talk to the police. Now, one other case came where a single man heard me on radio or television. He says, listen, my girlfriend's about to deliver. I want to prepay and set it up. On the day that we come back from the hospital, I want to get the test done. He heard what I said about that paternity confession. You know, the Paternity Opportunity Program.
I'm sorry. You
Listen,
do that so well.
listen, he says, ain't no way in hell I'm getting caught in that one. So he brings the mother and the newborn by my office because he prepaid the day before. So on the day he checks out of the hospital, he comes by, and in about 4 days, Marianne, the truth came back. my single client was not the father of the baby,
Mm-hmm.
and she still tried to get him to stay with her.
Uh,
He says he took her to her place, took her and the baby. He says she could have all the stuff he had bought in the car seat and said, see
mm.
ya.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and that's pathetic too, because, she's leading him on to believe that's
Yep,
their kid. And then he's
yep,
getting emotionally
yep,
attached to that child.
yep.
And then to find out, say, 5 or 10 years later, that is not your child. I mean, that's got to be some screwing with your mind.
So it's
Yes.
emotionally, it's financially. It could recommends. I have another guy who was a client. He became so depressed that he couldn't function at work
Mm,
because he only married her because she said these words: "I'm pregnant and you're the father." And he says he came under so much pressure from his family and
mm,
her family. He says, "Man, I felt like it was a shotgun wedding." And he
mm,
said, "And I did the right thing with the wrong person."
mm,
And by the way, he says, and she's still partying
mm-hmm.
since we've been married and doesn't want to go out with me, but she wants to go out and hang out with her single friends. And I told him, I says, listen, dude, number one, there's no way she didn't know that there was a possibility that you weren't the dad, or she knew for sure you weren't the dad. He did his own test. He took a home paternity test. And then he found out why I recommend clients to never take the home test, to always take the legal test.
Mm-hmm.
He took the home test and tried to go to court with it, and it was
Mm-mm.
thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why I say this, and the Slam the Gavel audience needs to know why Carnell Smith, as a paternity coach, says always on your first chance take the legal test, because the legal test is the only test that provides the identities of all of the parties who were sampled by a neutral third party collecting the sample, who has no stake in the outcome of the results, and full chain of custody evidence is recorded from sample to the lab, through the lab, and to delivery of the results. And if needed, we can keep the results secret right up until they get in the hands of the court and the judge reveals the results.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, that right there, when I pointed out to that guy and a lot of ladies, they said, but the home test is cheaper. I say, yeah,
Uh,
it is. It's cheaper
you,
for a reason.
yeah, you get what you pay for.
I said, you end up with a test that you'll know. I said,
Mm-hmm.
but then you can't do anything with it. And I says, now imagine this. You now know you're not the dad. The court won't accept your other test because they don't know whose kid you sampled. For all they know, you swabbed the dog and put the
Mm-hmm.
kid's name
Yeah.
on the sample envelope
Uh-huh.
and sent it in, and the results came back and say you're not related. And further DNA analysis says one of these samples is actually an animal.
Oh my God.
So there's a lot of nuances here where people, like, listen, there are reasons when you need to get expert help. Like something goes wrong in your house, you might be a do-it-yourselfer, but there's times you need a professional plumber.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When there's something goes wrong with your car, you might be a do-it-yourselfer, but there's a time you need a professional mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And in family law, you might be a DIY, pro se, pro per. There comes a time you're going to need a professional legal advocate who is licensed and skilled in the nuances of how to get evidence captured, what needs to be captured, what to object to, what to make sure gets in the record, so that
Mm-hmm.
if you lost on the bench trial, you can nail it on the appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you and I know, man, when you're in the hot seat, if you're locked up behind bars, they don't let you out of the jail so while you can go spend some time in the law library.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, hey, y'all, I need to spend about 4 days in here so I can get my case together. They're like, sounds like a personal problem, is what
Mm.
they'll tell you at the jail. Look,
Jeez.
as bad as this is, the good news is, by exposing the light of how this issue happens and who's at risk and why, as parents of sons and people who have friends who are deployed in the military and they made that mistake of marrying just because the person said they were pregnant, I said, listen, guys, my position as an advocate is you can't afford to trust that family court judge. That's who you can't afford to trust. You might tell me about how much you love this other person and how this was your girl from high school and how she would never do you wrong, but you don't see her with her fingers crossed behind her back while she's holding the other guy's hand. That right there says you need to be sure. If you're getting married because of a baby, you need to be sure that it's your baby.
Excellent advice. What would you tell, like, say, if my kids were sitting here before you, what would you tell them?
What I would tell, especially ladies, I would say, be truthful. I says you can't possibly know which guy caused your pregnancy if you're involved with people within that 60-day window of your pregnancy. So the conception date, 30 days before, 30 days after. And if you're involved with multiple people during that window, it could be any one of them. Be truthful in the disclosure that you don't really know. You think, you might feel, you might believe. And for men and boys, just because this person says these words, I love you, sometimes that comes with an ulterior motive. And people will hold on to you by trying to use a baby as bait. Using a bait baby to get access to you and your resources while they still also get to live a single life. And if you're going to be in an occupation where you're going to be out of the house a lot with an untrustworthy person, you're better off being single.
Yeah, you're better off being alone.
You're better off being alone. Look, as a famous songwriter said, named Wilson Pickett, he says, I can do bad by myself. I don't need any help starving to death.
Yeah, right. Oh my goodness.
Coming in contact with the family court has this thing called judicial discretion, where a judge can ignore the facts and take lies in as evidence, and then you find yourself behind the 8 ball trying to fight a lie. This is a very hard fight if you're innocent, trying to overcome being presumed guilty. So my advice is, it's okay to live with the mindset that people are good until they show you wrong. I said, but it's even wiser to know that sometimes smiling faces tell lies.
Oh, that's for sure. Hey, go ahead.
No, I'll say, and spend the time and don't be in a rush. I've learned over the years, whenever someone tried to rush me on a decision, if you don't buy it today, you're going to miss out. I said, well, if I keep my money, I won't lose a thing.
Right. That's right. That's right.
And if you demand I give you an answer now, no. Wait, sir, but you don't understand what we're offering. You said I had to give you an answer today. Good day. I just gave you an answer. But sir, you don't know. I don't need to know. I know that all of my resources, if I say no, they stay with me. I don't have to wonder whether you're trying to deceive me, give me partial facts, and then trying to trick me out of my resources. Now, that might sound a little jaded, but being honest that in the world, wisdom requires that you discern the motives of the people who are trying to get close to you. Discern the motives of why they want to be associated with you. And mind you, if you'll spend the time and keep your eyes open, you'll find out who they really are without the mask. And that goes for males and females alike. Sometimes people, they might be with you just because they took a bet to see if they could do it.
Yeah, people are sick. There's a lot of sickos out there.
Yes. And I hope you heard me. I never came down and saying that, we should burn women at the stake or none of that crazy crap. But I wouldn't let my son get away with you know, impregnating someone, and then I find out by proving with a DNA test that this child's my grandchild, I
Hmm.
wouldn't tell my son he's okay with skirting responsibility. And by the same token, I wouldn't tell my daughter she's okay with lying as long as she has plausible deniability.
Hmm. Right.
Like, no, no, no. Honesty and integrity comes first.
Hmm.
And be truthful, even if it means it would have cost you an advantage that you would have had, because ultimately the truth will come out.
Hmm.
And do
Oh,
you want
yeah.
to be on the side of, I wish I had told the truth in the beginning,
Hmm.
like some people who committed plagiarism and stuff like that, and they lose their degree and they lose a job and they lose a
Hmm.
career.
Hmm.
And now, because of that one decision,
Hmm.
a lifetime of you can't be trusted. It took me a long time to earn
Wow.
my security clearance. It took me a long time to gain a
Hmm.
position of high trust to where I can work in various financial industries and with governments and all of those things to do what I do.
Hmm.
I can't afford to take a shortcut that would kill my literally kill my working life.
Hmm.
So my advice, be willing to stick for the truth, even if it hurts. That's what my
Right.
dad told me. It says, be responsible, and what you do, you own it.
Hmm. Hmm. I always told my kids, just speak the truth.
Come
Just
on now.
speak the truth.
And look, and guess what? And you don't have to try to remember what you said when you tell the truth.
Hmm.
But when you start lying, then you got to keep up with who you told a lie to, what was the context you told a lie to them, what else did you tell them,
Hmm.
and then when you get confronted with it, man, God help you if you ever get in a legal situation where the stakes are pretty high and your character,
Hmm.
and all of these people can come and testify against your character. My father told me integrity matters.
Yes. Oh, yes, it's so important.
Marianne, I would not be able to be effective as a legal advocate before all these many state legislative bodies if I was shady with the truth.
Hmm.
Because when they ask me for facts, if they tell me it's something that I don't know, I say, okay, well, hold on. I don't know, but I know how to get it.
Hmm.
What's the timeline you need for me to get it? If I don't know or if I'm not sure, okay, look, I can say based on my last recollection, I think, but I need to confirm. Can
Hmm.
I get my notes? Can I check with my team? And and look, and I'll provide you with third party validation where you can verify. That's
Hmm.
important.
Oh, yes.
You can be
Oh.
credible. Look, if what you present is good, you should never be afraid of third party validation. That, Marianne, is how
Uh-huh.
I've been able to still keep being an effective spokesman and an advocate. Because, look, I'm not going to lie for someone just because they're a man. I'm not going to lie for them just because they're a woman. I
Hmm.
believe in the truth regardless of how it shows up.
Hmm.
The point is, once we get the facts out, now the adult thing to do is now deal with the consequences on the end. In
Hmm.
some cases, you could achieve some mercy because you were forthcoming.
Hmm.
My parents used to say, but if we have to investigate and find out, there will be no mercy.
Right.
You
Right.
tell us the truth now, and some mercy's on the table. But
Hmm.
if we have to dig and we
Hmm.
investigate, there will be no mercy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. How can people reach you if they've got questions or they need you?
Okay, well, that's a
You
very good thing. Thank you, Marianne. So
know?
the way you reach me is carnellsmith.com. That's CarnellSmith.com. And on my site, there's a way that you can contact us. I have a contact page there. And you can find me also on social media. On Facebook, I have a page. I am the paternity coach everywhere. So if you search for the paternity coach, one word, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on YouTube, and on my YouTube channel, you will see a lot of video content and news stories of people like the young man who was a high school student, thought he was the father. He said the child support agency hounded him so much that he quit college to get a job so he could pay child support. He had a full ride athletic scholarship.
Oh my God.
And after he quit football, got a job, then he got a paternity test and found out the baby wasn't his. He lost his scholarship. He lost his football opportunity. And he was so good, from what I hear, he had a shot at the pros. I would never tell a young man or woman to drop out of college. I would tell them to tough it out and stay with it, because you will increase your earning potential with that undergraduate more so than you would with a high school diploma. So if you visit my channels, my social media outlets, you can reach me through all of them. Paternity Coach on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if someone wants to, join my mailing list, I'll send them the 12 reasons why I believe people should take a DNA test. So go to my contact page and say, hey, I want to join your mail list.
Good, good.
I'll send you the 12 reasons why Carnell Smith says, if someone says you did it, I'm saying trust but verify. I'm not saying every person lies. I'm saying you don't know which people lie. And you can't trust the family court judge. You can't trust the offices of child support enforcement, because all of them make money based on how many people are paying in the system. And it doesn't matter to them what the truth is. They don't care. I asked them, do they track? And they said no in every state that I've tried to get information on. So to connect with me as the paternity coach, reach me on social media or my website, carnellsmith.com. And I hope this is a thought-provoking,
Oh, yes.
and informing show.
Yes, it definitely was. Hang on. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again. I'm going to have Carnell back on. Whether he likes it or not, he's coming back on for some more information. Join us again in the future with other guests. Thank you so much.